Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to kick off a new series that we are going to call our Introduction to HTML and CSS. HTML, of course, is our hypertext markup language, and CSS is our style or our cascading style sheets. Now, this video is meant to be a little bit of an introduction, focusing on the tools that we're going to be using, the resources online, as well as a basic workflow so you can get started. We're also going to cover a few tags in this particular video, but we're not going to go too in-depth in any of them. If anything, what we're going to do is we're just going to give you a brief introduction of where you can find your resources and how you want to go about setting up yourself for later videos. I'm going to show you a sample file and also give you some suggestions on naming and structuring your work so that it works well with future videos. In addition, you'll notice that I'm using Visual Studio. We can use other IDEs, and in later videos, I will show you, for instance, how to do things even in an application as simple as Notepad. You really should not need a lot to get started with this, but what we'll do is we'll first focus on the web resources that you want to use, starting with the W3 Schools HTML reference. The alphabetic one is the one that I encourage you to use, and that's what we will be using. And it simply just lists all of the possible HTML tags. And again, you'll see there's quite a lot of them, and there's no way that we could possibly cover this in one video, or for that matter, even in a long series of videos. The idea here is that I'm going to sort of give you the guidelines or the guidance for how to use this tool. And then from there, you want to sort of do a little bit of exploration. In addition, you probably want to go ahead and bookmark this page as well as the page for the HTML attributes, both from the W3 Schools and also the MDN or the Mozilla Developer Network. Now, the advantage of using the MDN documents is that in some cases they tend to go a little bit deeper into a particular topic than the W3 Schools does, which of course is a criticism of the W3 Schools sometimes, is that their examples are generally pretty cursory, but all three of these resources are great to have bookmarked. Now, let's go over to our file system real quick. You'll see that I have created a folder called Introduction to HTML and CSS. Right now I have no files in that folder, but I encourage you to do the same thing. The folder name, of course, doesn't have to be the same, but the idea is that we sort of want to group some of these demos together in one location. And also with the file names that I'm going to suggest, again, you can rename the files as you get more comfortable with using HTML and ultimately our CSS. Now, to get started, I'm going to go back over to Visual Studio. I'm simply going to go to File, New File, and I'm going to go ahead and create an HTML file. And I'm just going to let Visual Studio do its magic. In other words, I'm just going to let it work with its template. And we are going to maybe go in and make some modifications to this template in later videos. But we're going to start off looking at the anatomy of this HTML file. And then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and save it. And again, I encourage you to save this all in one location. And I'm going to give it a name. In this case, we're just simply going to call it sample_01. Perhaps not the most creative file name. And again, you can work with better file names later on. Now, if you look at the document, you'll see that it's a series of tags. In most cases, they consist of both an open and a closed tag. And particularly, we'll focus, for instance, on this HTML tag. You'll see that it opens as an HTML tag, and then it closes down here at the bottom of the document as a HTML tag with a slash in front of it. And you'll see that roughly that pattern is followed throughout the document. And we'll take a look at some of the individual tags in just a second, but you'll see that, for instance, we also have the idea of these self-closing tags where they do not have a particularly explicit, slash, and then in this case, meta. So we'll see there's a variety of tags, styles that we can employ here. We'll first take a look at our doc type tag that basically describes to the browser what type of file that it's going to be expecting. We're going to be focusing solely on HTML in this video and in most of the later videos. So this we will simply leave alone, but we do want to go over now to our documentation so we can understand where in the world we can find this. We can start with the HTML reference from the W3 Schools, and you'll see that one of the first tags that we can see here is the doc type tag. And again, we can take a look at it. You'll see that it just simply describes the type of document that the browser is going to be expected to display. There's not a whole lot of additional information with this, but for instance, we'll see here that the HTML5 standard simply has the HTML attribute in the doc type to indicate to the browser that this is supposed to be an HTML5 document. Now, going back again to Visual Studio, you'll see there is an HTML tag. And again, as we said earlier, it has both an open tag and a closed tag. And you'll see that there are some attributes in here, some of which turn out to be optional. This first one should be pretty descriptive in that it supports the English language. The second is not something I would worry too much about in this video, but it basically describes the XML namespace. The XML is another language, tagging language, metadata language that we will see in later videos. Basically what it does is it describes the structure of the document. Now, again, if you come back over here to the W3 Schools, you'll see that we have the HTML tag in this example, but you can also go down into the documentation, specifically looking for the HTML tag. And if you scroll down a little further in the document here in this page, you'll see in addition to the definition and the usage, they'll also list the attributes that may be associated with in this case, the HTML tag. Now, sometimes you'll find certain tags that will only support global attributes. Simply that means those are attributes that are available to all HTML tags, or you will see some specific attributes that will only work with a specific tag. In this case, the XML namespace, which again just simply helps you define the structure of the document. Now, if we come back here to Visual Studio, you'll see again, you've got another tag of interest, and that is the head tag. The head tag essentially provides some metadata, not only to the browser, but also for the developer. And we'll see that it can be used then to link style sheets and JavaScript for style and behavior. But the simplest thing that we always want to go ahead and set up inside of the head tag is the title. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to keep the title the same as the name of the file. In this case, I'm just going to do sample_01. I am going to intentionally leave off the .html so we can see this in just a second, what the behavior of this looks like. And then we will simply go ahead and save this, and we will come over to the browser by double clicking or opening with the sample_01.html. Now, please note, if you do not see the .html file extension, then you need to make sure and turn on file extensions on your operating system. In this case, I've also got this set up to work with Google Chrome, so I can just simply double click, and you'll notice here that I open it in my web browser, and this is not a very particularly interesting HTML document. As a matter of fact, it's got no real content to it, but you do see that in the tab in the browser, even though we've opened sample_01.html, that the text in the tab comes directly from the title. If you'd like to play around with this some more, you can by simply just modifying this title, and we'll just simply put something in here, example, we'll save it, and then we'll come back to our web browser and we will simply refresh it. You'll notice now that in the tab in my web browser, you can see that my updated title is now displayed. So fundamentally, the contents of the head tag, or the things that go in between the open and close of the head tag, aren't something that are necessarily directly seen in the rendering of the page, but this is where you put some information about the page that is to be rendered. Which brings us now to our next tag, and that is our body tag. Our body tag, as it describes, is the body of the HTML document. In other words, this is the part that will likely be displayed in the web browser. And I say likely because, as you're going to see later on, we can actually have only certain portions of it displayed. But for right now, you want to think of this as the portion of the document that actually gets rendered and displayed in your browser. And understand how this works, well, we're simply going to put some text in here. We're going to use an additional tag, probably the simplest tag of all, and that is the P tag or the paragraph tag. And again, you can go over to the W3 Schools page to look at the body and the P tag as well as the attributes. And we'll take a look at that in just a second. However, what I want to do is I simply want to put some text here. It says this is a sample paragraph. And again, we'll come back to some of these tags later on and see what sort of attributes can be supported with each one of these tags. But I'm going to go ahead and save this as it is, and then I'm going to come back over again one more time to my web browser. I'm simply going to refresh, and now you can see the text that says this is a sample paragraph. And I'll zoom in real quick so that we can see this. And oh my goodness, we had one job and I messed it up. I actually misspelled this. There we go. Let's go ahead and save this. And we can simply refresh it. And again, you could sort of get an idea of the workflow about how you would basically build some sample static web pages. You would just have to simply go back and forth between your IDE, making changes, saving them, and then refreshing the web browser. Now, if we go back real quick one more time to Visual Studio, just want to take a quick look at our body tag and our P tag. And again, we can go over to the HTML reference, and we can simply go and find them in the HTML reference as well. And you can see here that gives you the usage of the body tag. Again, simply defines the document's body. And you can see here that the body tag is pretty versatile in that it supports all of the global attributes in HTML. The global attributes in HTML are essentially just a subset of all of the attributes that are available in HTML that can be used on all of the tags or all of the elements. And again, we can simply look at the full list of attributes by going over to the HTML reference and looking at the attributes, and you'll see that there are many, many, many more attributes, as well as certain attributes that are no longer supported in HTML5. I would encourage you to stay away from any tag or attribute that is being indicated as being deprecated or is no longer available in HTML5. For the purposes of these videos, we're going to focus solely on HTML5. Now, hopefully you found this video useful. Hopefully you find this new series of videos a little bit more digestible. I'm going to try to keep these videos a little shorter. And I'm going to be focusing solely on HTML5, and I'm going to try to bounce around to some of the tags and the attributes that will be relevant in creating some very nice looking static web pages. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And thank you for watching.